a lot of financial advice that is available today. If you listen to the radio station on Saturday morning, you'll hear many programs that tell you what to do with your money, how to invest it. A couple weeks ago, I was listening, and one guy was promoting his particular firm, and every 30 or 40 seconds he was saying, call this number, call this number, call this number, call this number. He wanted to make sure you knew what his number was so that you could call and get help with your money matters. Now, seniors, many of you might know about this particular movie that came out called The Baby Boomer's Dilemma. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's talking about retirement among those who were born in that period, and actually it's wisdom not only for those folks, but for others as well. And the primary thing they're saying is that people have set aside money for retirement, and they're finding out that there isn't as much as what they expected. And part of the reason is that, when things are tied to the stock market, there's a volatility that can take place. And if there isn't, quote, some guarantees, it's very easy for some of those funds to be lost and not be able to be made up. And so it's an interesting thing to consider, and of course we need to be wise. In your life, in almost every area of your life, you've got to take responsibility. Spiritually, I say these two things. You got to be self-led and self-fed. Now, you can come and you can get food and church and be ministered to, and Bible studies and those kinds of things, which are very, very important. But you have to be self-fed also. You have to read. You have to study. You have to look at things. And I trust that when you're reading the scripture, that sometimes you just stop and say, what does that mean? And many times I will stop and I'll have to go look it up and say, what is it that's going on here in this particular passage? I'm reading through the book of Job again, and that is the thing that intrigues me so much is that book was written almost 4,000 years ago, and some of the things they are saying, you would think you were hearing that today. So the thought process of people's thinking, even back in that day, is similar to the thought process of today. And it's just interesting, some of the things that you see there. You have to have responsibility for your own well-being. You have to take responsibility. You have to ask questions, and you have to know. You can't assume. And I think the scriptures encourage us to do that. There used to be this song that we heard in the past. It's I owe, so off to work I go. All right? And now there's another verse. Oh no, where did my money go? And I'm sure you heard the fella that said, money talks, but the only thing it ever says to me is bye-bye. We understand this. And so Jesus, when he's talking to his disciples on the Sermon on the Mount, he indicates that how we handle our possessions reveals our values, and it shows what's important to us. I just put it this way. How we see and handle our possessions reveals our values. Now, I like garage sales. And when I go to garage sales, this is the frame of mind when I stop. Is there something there that I can't live without? And so I'll look, and if I can't, I got to have that. Then I will purchase those types of things. Now, do you realize that every year we throw away, personally, an estimated 65 pounds of clothing every year? And that 1 in 10 Americans, 1 in 10, have some type of off-site storage. You just drive around and see how many storage units they are. Over 50,000 storage units in the United States. One person has estimated that everybody in the United States could stand in all of those 50,000 storage units. Very, very interesting. When we read these verses in a moment from Matthew chapter 6, one of the things you're going to see that is Jesus is telling us and talking to us about hoarding. Got to have this. And you may have friends that have that capacity, or that tendency to do that. We have someone that's dear to us that in her younger life, she would come home, and on different occasions, everything that they had would be sitting out on the street because of a financial thing in their family. And they would often lose so much. And so this individual tends to be somewhat of a pack rat and somewhat of a hoarder. And it's because of what's taken place that they think that that's the only thing. They've got to keep everything that comes their way. And this it's important for us as we look at these verses here that Jesus wants us to know that he is ultimately our source. I read one story of a particular woman, Ida Mayfield. She lived in the latter part of the 19th century and into the 20th century, and she married a man named Benjamin Wood, who owned one of the major newspapers in New York. And this lady was well known in her day, and because of some trouble that they had in their marriage, he began to give her a lot of money, and she kept storing this money away. And then there was difficulty in 1907 that caused her to go into a panic. And when she died, they found $1 million in her home, which would be equivalent to $22 million today. And wrapped around her was $10,000, which would be the equivalent of $225,000 today. She hoarded those things, died with those things wrapped around her because she thought that's what she had to have. No benefit. All those things were there, but no benefit. I want you to watch as we would read these verses this morning. Now, the tendency, not with you folks, but some other folks, all right? People that we know that this isn't for them. We know people that this is for. But it's so interesting is that sometimes when we look at Scripture, we say, that's not us. I'm not rich. I don't have anything to store. What I get goes, And I realize what it is sometimes to live hand to mouth. When I was young in the ministry, there was no such thing as a charge card. I didn't have a charge card. I worked at Sears, and they wouldn't even give me a Sears card. And so I got hungry at times. And I remember one time I didn't have anything to eat but cookies until payday. So I ate cookies. Man, if I'd had a charge card, I'd be broke for sure. I was broke. this is for us. So we got to make sure that when reading these things, we're not saying, oh yeah, we know people. No. And what Jesus says, there's some things we should do and some things we shouldn't do. And now he's telling us what we shouldn't do and what we should do. All right? So even if you don't think it's for yourself, save it for somebody else. All right? So if you got it in your mind, at least you'll know this. Do not, he says, lay up for yourself treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourself treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. And boy, this is so true here. For where your treasure is, your heart will, there your heart will be also. Your heart is already there. The lamp of the body is the eye, and therefore your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your eye is evil, your whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No man can serve two masters, for either he'll hate the one and love the other, or else he'll be loyal to the one and despise the other. You can't serve God and mammon. Let me just say this as a side note too. When it says where moth, the first verse there, rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. The idea for that word rust is kind of an interesting thing, because if you have another translation, it actually means eaten up, and it has to do with more, not so much of coinage getting rust on them, but animals getting into what people had. The value that people had was clothing, mostly wool, and moths love wool. Clothing, and then they had grain, and that is very susceptible to animals. And then they had a few valuables, and they would take their valuables and sometimes dig a hole and put it in the ground or hide it somewhere so that thieves couldn't get at it. And so the idea here is that don't lay up yourself treasures that look, moth's going to eat the clothing. And in reality, they probably only had about 3 changes of clothes. 3 changes. So they didn't have to step into the closet, ladies, not men. We didn't have to step into the closet and say, oh, I have nothing to wear. Or what am I going to wear today? All right? In my closet, it's either black or gray. I don't have to make a lot of choices. I love those. The only danger I have is I have red. And there's been a time or two by mistake I put red and gray on. And then I realized, Andy, what I did, and I took it off, okay? Because how it would be yes. But it really means, if you have the NIV, I think the NIV is actually a better Greek translation of this, and it says where moth or vermin, all right, eat, because the word rust there means eating up, eat up, and then of course thieves would dig and break in and steal. And let me just say this. God is not against us having something. This is how it is. He wants us to have enough, all right, and a little extra. God wants you to have enough and a little extra, because it's out of the little extra you can do what? Give. And so he wants you to have enough, and he wants you to have more than enough so that you can give. Throughout this whole section here, that there's this heartbeat of generosity. It's this heartbeat that God has given to us so that we can give. God has blessed us so that we can bless. Now, as we look at this, the first thing that I want you to know, and I just put these thoughts like this as I work this through in my own mind and heart. How you save indicates your passion. How you save indicates your passion. See, and you'll see in just a moment, you can give without loving, but you cannot love without giving. God so loved the world that he gave. You cannot love without giving. And where our hearts are, it says, where our treasure is, our heart is already going to be there. See, money is neutral. Money in itself is neutral. And you know, I can take care of all that neutral that you have right now if you want me to. All right? But it's the love of money that leads to all kinds of evil. It's the love of it that does that to us. It's the root of all kinds. And people, it says there in Timothy, it says, and some have strayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves through many sorrows. Did you ever notice, somebody has done this for us, that love is mentioned in Scripture 714 times. Believe, 272 times. Prayer, 371 times. All right? Love, 714. Believe, 272. Prayer, 371. And giving, 2,152. I think the Lord talks about giving quite a bit. He wants us to understand 1/6 of Matthew, Mark, and Luke deal with money matters. So I would think that that is important. John Wesley, who the Wesleyan churches are named after, said this: earn as much as you can, save as much as you can, so that you can give as much as you can to God. He said, that is my goal. That middle verse is so revealing. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be. Billy Graham said it like this: our checkbooks are a theological document. They're a theological document. It tells us what we worship and tells us what we prioritize. Now, and I would add, our charge cards do the same thing, all right? It tells us what is important to us. And so when we think of this, the very first thing I want us to understand is that how we save indicates what is important to us. It indicates our passion. What are we passionate about? Passionate about. So the second thing that I see in these verses is how you see indicates the path you're going to take in this area. It indicates the path you take in this area. The verse says the lamp is done. And we're talking about saving and having things. And how you see the value of that is going to affect how you live. What do you want? What is the desire that I have, that you have? You know I like a special kind of car, right? And what's the name of it? Yeah. So I'm writing this message out. And so I realized that there's only one letter difference between Covet and Corvette. Now you got to add another T. And so honest, when I was writing Covet, I actually wrote Corvette. Someday. Someday. Oh, good. I got a witness. I will be looking, and I'll see a Corvette, and I'll just say, Connie, look, isn't that beautiful? Oh, isn't that beautiful? Yes. Oh, so, I mean, how we see things. See, our eyes are like windows. Spiritually speaking, they're like windows. And if things are blocking the window and we're not getting enough light, our path is going to be blurred. And if we focus only on material stuff, it's going to have a detrimental effect upon us. It's going to have it. It's going to have it. How we're seeing. And that's the reason why this is such a strong statement. I mean, if your eye's good, you're going to see what to do with what you've been given. And at the end of this, I wrote a statement down. How do I know whether my eye is good or bad? How do I know? How do I know that I got this message? How do I know that I'm either serving God or mammon? How do I know that? This is the question that I have to ask myself, and the question you have to ask yourself. The way that I know, the way that I can know, is I have to answer this question. Am I a generous person? Am I a generous person? If I am a generous person, then I got what Jesus is talking about. Am I generous? Not just with your purse or your wallet, but with your life, with your heart, with your time. The whole am I a generous person? Because that's the kind of heart that God is looking for. You know, as I sat there listening to my brother tell fish stories, it would, if we could have had a video, it was just so, it was wonderful in several senses, but he would start a story and he'd say, oh, yeah, wait a minute, and remind me to tell you about this one. And then he'd get about third way, oh, yeah, and I got one more after that. And I mean, he just kept, you know, he was fishing with my dad one time, and my brother Wayne is a half-brother. He and I have the same mom, but not the same dad. His dad died. And they're fishing, and he falls out of the boat. And it's dark. And he's grabbing the hold of the side of the boat, and my dad says, Wayne, go to the back of the boat and climb in. Go to the back of the boat, Wayne. And I said, Wayne, did he just say it just like that? He said, just like that. It wasn't like, Wayne, go to the back of the boat. No, Wayne, go to the back of the boat and climb in. You won't tip us over if you do it that way. And then he said, wait, I got another one. And he had another one. I mean, he had all of these stories about catching fish, pulling it in, and another fish jumps on that fish. And he reels that, I mean, all of these stories. And I thought to myself, you know, Wayne, I love the fish stories, but I didn't come here to talk about fish stories. And then I realized he's talking to me. And he hasn't been talking to me forever. That's the longest conversation I had with my brother in my life. In my life. You know how it is. When somebody else does all the talking, you know what they say when you're done? It was just so much fun talking to you. And that's what he said. We invest time. Time. And I said to myself as I was sitting there on this porch, I said, I couldn't trade this for anything. I begged for this. I prayed 50 years for this. So, what's important? How are we seeing things? How are we seeing things? Yeah, you know me, I'm A to B. And I got to understand that there's things between A and B. That I got to enjoy the journey to A and B. And that part of that is being able to see the opportunity that is there and that is around us. How do I see that? How do I see and understand those things? If I see clearly, then I've got it. Then I realize when I see clearly, I tend to be more generous. I tend to be more generous. And I know that's the kind of God that I serve. So, let me meddle just a little bit here. The average churchgoer today, now I realize we're talking about another church, okay? We're talking about other people. The average churchgoer today gives 1.5 to 2% of their income. 1.5 to 2%. Now, we know that's other places, all right? During the Great Depression, the giving was 3.3. Almost twice as much during the Great Depression. We need to see correctly so we value things. And when we do that, we're going to know what contentment is. How we value things affects our contentment. In the beginning of the 20th century, the richest man in the world, or at least in America, was John D. Rockefeller. Based on today's dollars, Rockefeller had more money than Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and Warren Buffett combined. Now, I'm from Detroit, okay? You know that. I would say, that's a lot of jack, all right? And he was asked, Rockefeller was asked, how much is enough? And you know what he said? You probably heard this. Just a little more. Just a little more. Never enough, is it? It's never enough. It's never enough. In fact, if you read Ecclesiastes, it's such an interesting book because it tells us that we cannot even enjoy good things unless God gives us the ability to enjoy. Think about that. God gives you the ability to enjoy. You can't even enjoy unless God gives you the ability to do that. Lastly, who you serve indicates your priority. When we understand who we serve, we are willing to invest in the future. We are willing to lay up treasures on things that will last much longer than our lifetime. It's hard when we have a divided heart. And we want to say, God, help us. Help us. What is our priority? You can't be part-time. The question is who owns us? Who owns us? Who owns me? Am I? Where does my identity come from? Where does my meaning come from? Where does my joy come from? Now, I check the stock market just like many of you might. I check portfolios like many of you might do. But where is my joy coming from? Where is my identity in it? We know that we have to rest in God because there's a lot of it. There's a lot at stake. A lot at stake. And we can't wait. Well, someday I'll get this together. Someday, when I really get some money. Someday, when I really have the time. Someday I'm going to do this. Someday. Penny said as she was leading that if you're away from God, today's the day. Don't let it be somewhere down the line. Now is the time. Now is the time. Now is the time. Many of you remember a song that was written by Harry Chapin years ago called Cats in the Cradle. And it says, let me just give you a reminder on it, because this song speaks about, better do it now. My child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way. But there were planes to catch and bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away. And when he was talking, for I knew it, and as he grew, he would say, I'm going to be like you, Dad. I'm going to be like you. And then the refrain is, the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue, the man in the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. We'll have a good time then. And then the song goes over and over and over until at the end, I've long since retired and my son's moved away. I called him up just the other day. I said, I'd like to see you if you don't mind. He said, I'd love to, Dad, if I can find the time. You see, my new job's a hassle and the kid's got the flu, but it's sure nice talking to you, Dad. It's sure nice talking to you. And then he says, it occurred to me as I hung up the phone that he is just like me. He was the boy. He became a boy just like me. When you're coming home? Soon? When is it going to change? When is it? When is it? I mean, if you... See, somebody's got to say this sometimes. About encouraging you to give. And as a pastor, that is my responsibility. And I'm always hesitant. But when I was away this week, one lady came up to me and she said, I want you to know, Pastor, and this is 35 years ago, I want you to know when you were here that you taught us to tithe, and it has made the difference in our life. And I'm thinking, of all the things to remember, oh, you visited me when I was in the hospital, or you said this and I remember this. But you taught us to tithe, and it's made all the difference in our life. If you haven't settled that in your life, you need to settle that. You need to settle that. Now, I know I'm talking to the choir here in this. But when? And when are you going to get involved? And right now with this staff shifting here, we need some help. All right? We're going to need, and those of you who have signed up and are assisting, make sure you find that place, because it's important as we're during this shift time with staff. And I'll give you more information. We've been talking to people. I'll give you more information as things unfold. But now's the time. Now's the time. And I can't thank you enough for the help that I have seen that's going on, not only here and the help we've had across the street, but at 860, all of the things that you folks are doing, and then giving to match this $10,000 challenge. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. But I want all of us to be on board. All of us. All right, so here's the question. Here's the question. If you could have anything you want, what would it be? Now, I know the Sunday school answer is, the Sunday school answer is Jesus. No. And that's a good answer. But think about if you could have anything you wanted, what would it be? Now, I have two things that I struggle with, my two tensions in my life with this. Immediately when I asked myself that question, I said, if I could have anything that I wanted, I would want my family in heaven with me. That's all I would want. And I have to stop myself, because as good as that is, that has to be second to what I really want. Has to be. If I could have anything, I would want God's approval on my life. Nothing is more important than that, because God is not a means to an end for my family to get in heaven. He's not a means to an end. It's like, God, you're good, but this is what I want more than anything else. No, I want that. But your approval on my life is the most important thing to me. If you're pleased with me, then I have fulfilled the reason you created me. And there's nothing higher than that. So what do you want? What do you want? What do I want? What do we want? I buried a dear friend last week. She happened to be one of my past admins. And she was a great help to me. And I said, what would be the word to describe her life? And as I meditated on it, this is the word that I came up that described her life. It was the word graced. Not only did she receive grace, she showed grace. And I thought, oh God, that's what we all want. Not only have we received it, but we show it. We live a graced life. That's what we are after. So, God is telling us, Jesus is telling us, in these verses, 19 to 24, trust me with all you have.